But anyway, so we heard quite a lot from Gabriel, and I think it was very insightful. But perhaps before we kind of get stuck into questions, Adrian, could you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what Maxcode does? We know it's software solutions, but please tell us a bit more about your focus.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Adrian. Work as CTO at Maxcode. Maxcode is a software company. We've been building software for the past 20 years. We're mainly active in the fintech area. 20 years ago, we were working on some really trendy topics back then, like billing and invoicing, which is now probably not that trendy anymore. But nowadays, we're more into things like decentralized finance, blockchain, crypto, but also more traditional areas such as open banking and mobile payments and things like that. Mainly in my work, I help clients understand what they actually need from a technical perspective. So basically here, I'm kind of bridging the gap, just like Gabriel was mentioning before. Bridging this gap, trying to take this business idea and these business concepts and translate them into technology and what they need, either to build end-to-end solutions or to improve their current solutions to get an increased reliability or decrease time to market and other such key buzzwords like this. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Adrian. So it's all about the software and helping clients solve real problems.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. So, Sarel, we were just chatting before, and I think you mentioned that your organization was a startup back in only 2016, and now it's an enormous fintech as a services company. So could you just tell us a bit more about yourself and a little intro into Rapyd for those people who are not familiar, perhaps, with the organization?
Sure. My name is Sarel, VPMA at Rapyd. Rapyd, as you mentioned, is a relatively new player in the fintech space. And I will discuss the fintech versus payments as we go later, I think, into the discussion. But we are a fintech as a service provider. Started out in 2016 as a consumer-facing e-wallet in the UK, launched in the UK, and then realized that scaling globally as a fintech is almost an impossible task where you need to get your local regulations, local integrations across the world. And we've started looking at a provider that will enable a company like us to scale globally. And we've realized that there is no platform that a company that wants to scale in the fintech space or the payment space globally can connect to. And we have then pivoted into what is today known as Rapyd, which is a fintech as a service platform. Fintech as a service platform means that we are an API-based platform that merchants and businesses can connect to us to consume fintech services across the world. But it's not only a technology platform for integration purposes. We're also fully regulated financial service provider across multiple jurisdictions globally, anywhere from Europe, UK, Singapore, US, and other countries, which enables us to actually hold the funds on behalf of our customers. So customers that connect to Rapyd can basically use Rapyd to collect funds, hold funds, and disperse funds on a global basis. And I think this is Rapyd in short. When people look at Rapyd, and sometimes for the technology people in the audience, it's maybe easier to reference Rapyd as the AWS of fintech. Instead of building all your fintech services in-house, just like you go into the Amazon AWS cloud or any of the other cloud services and consume all of these services, you come to Rapyd and you consume all of the fintech services that you require through the Rapyd API based on the Rapyd regulations.
So it sounds like you're basically a one-stop shop to do with service provision across the whole kind of value chain of payments, as far as I understand. But so answer that, because I can see I didn't summarize it in a way that you felt comfortable with. So.
Yeah, that was an understatement because there is much more than it, and I think we'll discuss this again later. I don't want to take it all stage now, but there is much more than just the payment collection or the payment disbursement or the holding. There is onboarding, there is KYC, there is fraud management, there is FX management, there is consumer-facing issues, there is B2B side to it. So there's many aspects of managing the fintech flow of a business. I think one of the things that we've seen in Gabriel's presentation is kind of what I would call payments 01, which was collecting payments from consumers through integrating into a gateway. And then you look into payments, what I would call payments 2.0, which is the orchestrators that enabled you to kind of optimize, reduce cost, optimize approval rate, integrate into local payment methods with a single integration into an orchestrator. And I think the world is now moving into what I would call fintech 1.0, which is a fintech platform that covers not only the consumer collection, but also the accounts receivable versus accounts payable, and all of the financial route that the payment is only a small part of in the payment process.
Yeah. So you would take an even more holistic view, which is very kind of fintech oriented, and
Right.
I think that makes sense. On your side, Adrian, if you had to address this key question about payments and competitive advantage, let alone payments architecture, how would you address that from the challenges that you see in your business?
Yeah, well, actually, during Gabriel's presentation, it was really interesting to see him mention the IT area being very busy. It's good to get people at the same table. I think that's for me at least, that was the main takeaway from the presentation, that this is a trend that's actually happening right now, to set people at the same table to discuss the topics together and to see all the implications that revolve around basically bringing the business side into the technical side. You're no longer just two separate departments, two separate areas. You work together to actually be competitive and to drive your payments into a competitive area.
So you're no longer taking just a set of requirements and then going away and starting developing code that maybe addresses or doesn't address those requirements. No, you're part of that initial kind of solution speccing for a real business problem.
Yeah, because if you think of the landscape as being the market, the business drivers, and then the technical drivers, if this is an entire life cycle and three components that barely interact with each other or do so every couple of weeks, then you're clearly not being competitive there. So the closer you are able to get the market to the business people, the business drivers, and to the technical people, the better you are and the more competitive you can become. Because it's shortening all these communication lines is key to actually making a successful solution, because there's no one solution fits all. And especially if you're expanding into a global market, something that might work in Europe will definitely not work in Singapore, for example, like you were mentioning the expansion into other areas of the world. So the shorter time span and the quicker decisions you can make, the more you get into a competitive area.
Well, I mean, this kind of resonates with something that Gabriel was saying, which was about this 360-degree view on, solving that payments problem. And I think, Gabriel, you were kind of saying it should be focused more from an area perspective rather than a department perspective. But clearly you have organizational issues, you have technical issues. But do you want to elaborate a bit more on that? Because that resonates a lot with what Adrian just mentioned.
Sure. I think something that has been very explored and used especially in the fintech space was this agile approach that now is everywhere. Agile, I think, is a really word used by everyone. Not sure everyone knows what it means, but definitely payments is agile. So if you don't involve all the departments and especially your IT in the decision-making process, and you just come to IT with a set of requirements, then you are not ensuring the maintenance and the evolution of your platform. So, at the end of the day, you are somehow limiting the possibilities that you have by not including the right people in the decision-making process. So, and getting to your question, Alan, is that I think you cannot only define departments and even functions, because each organization is different. So it can change from, complexity or number of people, employees, resources. So in any company, from a 2-people company to a 2,000 people company, you need to define at the end of the day the same set of requirements, of course, adapted to each situation.
Yeah. So, Sarel, I guess on your side, that's also probably very relevant, because you kind of went from being a startup in 2016 to recently a company, that's now a principal member of Visa, MasterCard, has an electronic money license. I don't know how many teams you have focused on architecture in which part of the fintech value chain, but I imagine that's a pretty relevant issue for your organization.
It's always an issue, and I think IT resources are always scarce, regardless of how big the company. Rapyd is today almost 900 people, and I think more than 50-60% of the company is R&D and product, and we're still struggling. But I think to just build on what my colleagues here were saying, you can either build everything in-house, manage it in-house, and coordinate it in-house, or you can consume these services externally and have somebody else do the heavy lifting of building the infrastructure, maintaining the infrastructure. Regarding to something that I think Gabriel referenced earlier as a lock-in into when you use such providers, I think, again, if you look at the IT space and the cloud services, there is a choice. You can move from one cloud to another cloud. There are tools today that enable you to move from clouds. So as more providers will be providing this platform offering, and we're seeing this across the market today where our competitors or other players in the market are moving into some kind of a platform offering. We've seen Checkout just announcing last week that they're entering into card issuing. We see Stripe moving into additional services, making payouts, offering bank accounts, offering wallets for the customers. So I think the major players in the space have understood that platform is, what I would call the FinTech 1.0 or payments 3.0. So there will be an option for, the larger retailers to use multiple clouds, multiple APIs. So I don't think lock-in will be an issue. But the other thing to take into consideration when looking into a platform is the internal architecture of the platform. Mm-hmm. Because what we see today in the industry is that players are starting to attach and add on different services by acquisitions and building and connecting these platforms. But these are inherently different platforms that are integrated. And this is where you run into reconciliation issues and integration issues and data integrity issues between these platforms versus a platform that was designed bottom up as a platform to support multiple services. So going back to Rapyd, we have built a platform that is basically a ledger system, a very large ledger system that customers can use and consume the different services on top of the ledger systems, deploy wallets, and these could be regulated wallets or non-regulated wallets. These could be business wallets or individual wallets. And basically, it's a very flexible infrastructure that you can build different fintech services on top of. So when looking at a platform, it's also important to look at the internal architecture of the platform to understand, what does it build on and what is the flexibility that it enables.
So it sounds like part of your sales pitch is probably running through the kind of the architecture of the platform, the APIs that people have to integrate with or don't have to integrate with. But that probably is the key. It's like, if I'm a merchant, how do I easily get onto your platform? How do I integrate that with my other business flows in a way that doesn't create a whole lot of disruption?
Right. And it's not only today, it's also future looking into additional services. You brought up the issue of omni-channel. So it's not only online. We're now talking about the physical space, the retail store, the online store, where we're seeing a trend where, most retailers want to be, provide their customers what I would call the Apple experience. Yeah. You walk into the store, you meet somebody on the floor, and you complete the payment process right there with a little, fancy terminal. You don't need to go to the till, stand in line, and provide this kind of complete customer experience. So these are kind of the services that we see our customers are now asking to be integrated into the payment. So it's no longer just online payments and optimization of the payment page, adding local payment methods. How do you integrate the on-floor payment process, providing soft POS, digital terminals, and integrating that into a true omni-channel integration?
Okay. Adrian, on your side, are you taking a big platform approach, or is it very much, whatever solution, we'll architect it for you, we'll put it together on a more or less bespoke basis?
Yeah, it's a good question because I was thinking based on what you said, the idea of companies growing nowadays by acquiring other companies, other businesses, and then kind of forcing integrations between services. And it used to be that back in the day, you would future-proof your technology by keeping the same people in the company and having the inside knowledge. Nowadays, that's not necessarily the case because you end up having to work constantly on adding new features on top of your existing features, integrating new services. So the way to future-proof that is to become even more agile and to integrate external services on, and to rely on, although it might be risky, but to rely on external parties to handle some of your operations, because in the end, you have to decide as a company, what are you doing? I mean, it's right people in the right seats, of course, but what are you doing? Are you a infrastructure management company? Are you a payment service provider? What is your main focus? And based on that decision and that discussion, you end up making an actual decision in the end to focus on the business or on the technical side of things. So getting back to your question, I think there's no right answer to that. You can decide to be a huge platform and do it all on your own, if that's your focus and you want to be completely independent and act like a shell, completely closed up. But at the same time, you can be really open and externalize a lot of your services and a lot of your more heavy-duty items and focus on the core business, which might be something really related to payments or to open banking or something, but just focus on the business and leave the technical things out and have a simplified solution that basically eats up all these other services from the technical landscape, which means you end up not being locked into a specific provider. You can have redundancy there. It's much easier to balance that out. But it's a discussion you have to make, and it's a difficult discussion. It's a difficult decision, but in the end, you're forced to make it because it's the fate of your company.
And clearly no single one right answer. But I think coming back to something Sarel said, which was the kind of Apple experience, and clearly looking at your fintech as a service platform, that's clearly a very new approach compared with the sorts of systems that people are still working today with in retail, or in payment service providers, running gateways, which were probably someone had the idea back in the year 2000, and it was kind of only really up and running in the year 2012. And now there's so much kind of business logic in it that no one is going to try and touch that thing because of maybe everything's going to fall apart. But Gabriel, on your side, I think you spend time talking to people about managing this migration from legacy to really kind of digitally transformed platforms. But can you share a little bit of insight on that?
Sure. I think it's a very complex topic, and because it usually involves many people and also a lot of money and time and prioritization. So I think you can only make big companies especially move to the next level by putting figures in front of basically measuring the value added of whatever change you want to make. So you definitely need to align all stakeholders' objectives. And I'll elaborate a bit more on that. For instance, I'm thinking about a recent client that I had. They wanted to change their payment architecture. They knew that it didn't work as they would have liked, but didn't know where to start with, and at the same time they didn't want to spend more money and pay more expensive than what they are already doing. So basically, we try to find new revenue generation items, and in that particular case was using better dynamic currency conversion, so that we could basically finance the investment to migrate to the new payment architecture. These are very specific example, but sometimes you can also automate part of the reconciliation, so you are putting people on more relevant functions. So you need to find the leverage and to measure whatever the change you want to make. It's not just a matter of business or finance that has a particular problem. Either you may have business wanting to add a payment method, but then they are not really able to prove internally that makes sense. And you need to coordinate everything internally.
That makes sense. You seem to be in absolute agreement with that, Sarel.
No, I think the point of finding and turning this infrastructure into a revenue generator rather than a cost saver is a completely change in the industry. And as you add different capabilities and integrate these capabilities, you can really start adding these value-added services that will generate more revenues or cut your costs. The payment flow itself is just the core flow of money, but on top of it, there are additional services that are starting to be an integrated part of the payment flow. We're looking at GDPR and privacy issues where are coming to be very important, and merchants and retailers kind of want to stay away from it. They don't want to take the risk. There's significant financial risk with the GDPR issues, to the point where we had a very large customer here in Germany, for example, and somebody in the automotive space that was in the need to refund drivers of corporate cards the charges of the fees for charging the corporate car at home. But in order to do that, they needed to collect the personal information, including the bank account information of the drivers, which is something they were not happy to do. So this is where they turn around to us, and in addition to performing the collection of the payments from the employers and the disbursement of the payments to the drivers, we also enable them to tokenize that banking information on the Rapyd systems, and all they needed to store on their end is a token that they can use to process these payments. So this is just one example of a service which has nothing to do with payments, but is part of the payment flow. And there's other examples that we can look at, additional services that are now kind of closely attached into the payment flow.
Well, I guess it's all customer data, isn't it? And at the end of the day, the benefit of payments is we have an architecture which enables customer data to be managed in a secure and trusted way, which for many organizations is a big challenge. But Adrian, do you think payments can actually really deliver on that kind of top line revenue growth rather than just be part of the kind of cost operations, let's say, or operational cost?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's also dependent on the line of business that your company has. But of course, it's like you were saying, it's basically the idea of turning something that was a cost, turning it into an advantage. The same here with payments. So it's key for you as a company to see what the opportunity is to turn it around, and to not have it like a risk, but instead like an opportunity to maybe connect with more clients, more businesses.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, clearly, and it's a good thing to aspire to. And for people in payments, clearly it's a way that you can be in a much more meaningful discussion with an organization. You're not just about kind of keeping the costs down. You're not being pushed on every single cent of your own cost model. You're about how can you get more business, how can you get more customers through the door, which is very relevant. Now, one of the things that we talked about was payments orchestration, and to me, it sounds absolutely fantastic. You can see the whole thing being smoothly organized, left, right, and center. But Gabriel, how are you seeing payment orchestration? You gave it as one of the operational models, I think, but is that something that you would recommend for all merchants?
I think first is definitely a hot topic, and in terms of value proposition, I think is something all the payment industry was really expecting to become mainstream, and I think we are at that point today. However, what is less obvious is in terms of stability and reliability of those providers, because I was mentioning that vendor lock-in risk if you go with a full service provider, but then what if you are going through an orchestration layer to put all your business technically through this player? So at the end of the day, you are having the same risk by just going through this platform. That's one thing to consider. And on the other hand, those players have been, most of them raising funds quite recently. Is it going to be the case in the upcoming months and years? That's another open question that I personally have. And also, can they answer all merchant needs? I think they can answer most of merchant needs when it comes to digital payments. At least you can find an orchestrator that can connect, or that is willing to connect to your main provider's main needs. But then I think the main challenge remains at the POS. So for digital players, orchestration is something very interesting to explore. However, on the retail and POS side, I think it's something that needs to be really developed further. Because for now, it's more a matter of reconciliation, but not really routing, since hardware and especially all terminal systems are and have to be secured from a point-to-point encryption perspective. So the orchestration cannot really step in and orchestrate at the point of sale. So I think point of sale is the main challenge that I personally see, apart from all the others.
Point of sale is a very worthy challenge for sure, and someone's very much focused on it. Now, we're running out of time, but I'd just like to open up to the floor. Do we have any questions? Anyone like to ask the panel members? We do have a microphone in the Patricia at the back has it. So any questions? Now's the time. Questions from the audience? No? Okay, good. So just a last question then on our side, because you mentioned point of sale, and I'm very much focused on point of sale myself. Will it become digital? Are we going to get rid of devices at the point of sale? Is that where your kind of challenge is headed?
Well, if I can maybe give a quick answer, I think everything is becoming more digital, but will that mean that terminals will disappear, or will they rather become a different type of device, such as a smartphone? At the end of the day, it's sort of a hardware that you're putting, the software in there. So I think rather than disappearing, they will switch to the new technology, the new devices, and either old-fashioned terminals will become closer to smartphones, or a smartphone will become the new terminals. I think could be
interesting view. Sarel?
Well, I think the terminals that we've been seeing around for the last 15, 20 years, these are already probably out of scope, but we will still need to see a physical device on the storefront. But payment will be only a small part of that capabilities of that terminal in-store terminal. You need to connect the salesperson into the logistics, into the ERP system. Things that we've seen some of our customers do with the terminals is you complete the sale at a store. Now the customer wants to walk out of the store with the product, but there is an ID tag on the product that you need to disable. So now they're automatically disabling the RFID tag from the point of sale, from the terminal that they're using to complete the sale, so the customer can just walk out and doesn't have to stop at another stop and disable the RF tag. So this is just another example of increasing the customer experience on the point of sale. At the same time, it's automatically connected into their logistics systems, and they're reducing that specific item from the inventory in the store, goes back all the way into their logistics systems, and making sure that over the night this item will be replenished on the shelf. So again, the terminal is the terminal, which is a one-use, for one-use services, a payment processor, will be gone, or effectively, I think it's gone today in most cases. But we will see, basic terminals that will be, have more functions, marketing functions, coupons, invoicing.
I think it really is a smart point of interaction that people are looking for. They're looking for that intelligence to really complete the consumer journey. Last word, Adrian, your thought on that?
Yeah, so I'm kind of the old man in the room, so I'm just telling that the dumber a device, the better it is, because it's less vulnerable, it's less prone to breaking, to giving access to unwanted parties. So definitely, the traditional device with the embedded paper receipt will disappear. It's mostly disappeared already. But once you open it up to new smartphones, for example, you get a lot of risks. There are a lot of security risks. Just last week, there was a huge vulnerability discovered where somebody could take access from a device just by knowing the phone number of that device, which is really bad if you're running a software solution on that device.
Well, I'm delighted you've all got to the message I wanted to give, which is that dedicated devices at the point of interaction are still here to stay. We're rapidly running out of time, and we have a hard stop because it's lunch. They have to start moving things around. I'd love to firstly thank the speakers and panelists, so Gabriel, Sarel, Adrian, many thanks. I'd like to thank everyone in the audience for joining us and listening, and wish you all a great lunch. Thank you very much.